We're now going to be handing over to our speaker, Ms. Maria De Amico. She is from the Franchise Association of South Africa. She is the director, board member, and chairperson. And she's going to be sharing with us a little bit more about the franchise legalities.
Thank you for inviting me and giving me an opportunity of providing a little bit of information on franchising law. As I've been introduced, I'm the chairperson of FASA, so I wear two hats. FASA is the Franchise Association. I'm also an attorney at Thompson Wilkes. So the question is, when you want to get into franchising, what does it involve? So the first thing is the Consumer Protection Act. You cannot get past franchising without implementing the Consumer Protection Act. The next thing you will need is a disclosure document and then a franchise agreement. This is just a brief background. You will also need to register trademarks, and you will be required to have an operations manual when you get into franchising. So the Consumer Protection Act, you've all heard about the Consumer Protection Act. It's here to protect the consumer. And a franchisee, by definition, if you look at the definition of consumer, it includes franchisee. Then we have Section 7 in the Consumer Protection Act that deals with franchising. This act has made it compulsory that a franchise agreement must now be signed. In the past, you could have a verbal arrangement or a tacit agreement, but now by law, the franchise agreement has to be signed. We have regulations, which is part of the Consumer Protection Act, that sets out if you have a franchise agreement or a disclosure document, it has to contain certain information. So a franchise agreement by its very nature is quite a voluminous document. It's unlikely to reduce everything into a few pages or 10 pages because if one looks at the regulations, there's approximately 40 things that your franchise agreement must contain. And hence your franchise agreement is quite lengthy. So it's very important that your franchise agreement is compliant. So now you come to a disclosure document. So if you're the franchisor or the prospective franchisee, a bit of background is if you're the prospective franchisee, you want to get involved in a franchising, you particularly want one particular brand, you've done your homework, you've heard by word of mouth, you've seen advertising, you've perused the website, you've looked at social media, you now are happy with brand X. You then approach the franchisor and you start communicating with them on details, information for you to make a decision whether you wish to be part of this brand. So after certain interaction, if you get past the next level of discussions, the franchisor will provide the prospective franchisee with the first step of documents, and that's a disclosure document. So in terms of the Consumer Protection Act, this is mandatory. You have to give your franchisee the disclosure document. So what does this document contain? It's a mission statement. It sets out the background information of the franchise. It sets out all the details of the directors, the work experience. So when you look at this document, you know that the senior management, who the senior management is, and the type of experience they've got. Very importantly, in a disclosure document are the financial projections. So if you're the franchisor, you need to ensure that your financial projections are as accurate as possible. If you're the franchisee, you need to look through the financial projections. Do a due diligence. Do your homework. If you don't understand the financial projections, please go and get assistance. Get somebody to look through it. Let somebody go through it and see if the numbers, the financial numbers, is sustainable for this type of business. In your disclosure document, there's also a list of franchisees. So you as a prospective franchisee are entitled to contact any franchisee. You can then speak to a franchisee and say, does brand X assist you? Are they helpful? Do they provide ongoing training? Do they provide assistance? Are they available when you need information? So that's all part of your due diligence. If you remember nothing else, but remember this, if you're going to be a franchisee, please do a proper due diligence. This doesn't guarantee success, but certainly reduces the risk. And at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. How can we reduce any risk of any business that we are going to spend our possibly pension money, our savings, whatever money you're going to inject in this business, your time and your effort, you want to reduce the risk. With a disclosure document, the law says that once you've got a disclosure document, you are not allowed to sign the franchise agreement until 2 weeks have transpired or lapsed. Then we get to the franchise agreement. So the franchise agreement contains a lot of information, and that is because the CPA, the Consumer Protection Act, says your franchise agreement has to contain this information. So your franchise agreement is the contractual relationship between franchisor and franchisee. It must contain all obligations, all financial obligations. There cannot be any hidden costs. So the franchisor cannot say that for this brand is 100,000, but at the end of the day, with the setup costs, the upfront fee, the working capital and everything, it's then 200,000. The CPA says that's an absolute no-no. So the financial obligations need to be as accurate as possible. There is margin for a little leeway, but certainly 50% difference is not acceptable. The franchise agreement also sets out the obligations of the franchisor and the franchisee. And once again, we have a cooling off period. So once you have signed as a franchisee the franchise agreement, you have 10 working days or 2 weeks to have a cooling off period. So if on day 9, working day 9 or 10, you decide, thank you, I've got cold feet, I'm not sure about this, you're entitled to cancel the franchise agreement without any liability. So if you've paid your franchisor any monies, the franchisor is obliged to refund you 100% of that fee. So let us look at the criteria. So if you're going to be the franchisor or you are a franchisor, just to run through, you need to make sure that your franchise agreement complies with the Consumer Protection Act. If not, the franchisee can take a technical point and get out of the franchise agreement and not be liable at all. I've used this on numerous occasions where I represent the franchisee. First thing I do is look at the franchise agreement. Is it compliant? If not, the franchisee has a gap to get out of it. So I cannot stress enough that you have to ensure that when you prepare franchise agreement, it has to be compliant with the Consumer Protection Act. I mentioned to you the cooling off period in terms of the disclosure document and the franchise agreement. To repeat what I've mentioned, if your franchisee has paid you any monies, any deposit, and within the 10-day cooling off period, they wish to get out of the contract, they no longer want to be bound, they're entitled to do that. And you as a franchisor have to refund 100% of the fee. So what can you do as a franchisor so you have happy franchisees? Because at the end of the day, franchising isn't only about the franchisor that sits up there and the franchisees at the bottom. There needs to be collaboration between franchisor, franchisee. Both of you are working towards a brand. So what can you do as a franchisor? The initial thing is initial training. Give proper training to your franchisee. Make sure your franchisee understands your business, understands how to operate, and understands what is expected in their capacity as franchisee. Please also give ongoing training. Communicate with your franchisees regularly. Don't wait until there's a problem and then that's the only time that there's communication. Notify your franchisee what needs to be done. Don't wait until your franchisee has breached the agreement and then you pull out the stick and say, I'm now sending you a breach letter. That's so far gone. So there needs to be regular communication so that hopefully your franchisee never breaches. So you can inform them, do this, do operational audit on your franchisee business regularly. So if you're a franchisee, what should you be aware of? Please make your franchise agreement, have it checked by an attorney who understands franchising. Because as you can now understand, with franchising, the Consumer Protection Act, it's a specialized area of law. So get an attorney who understands franchising, have them look at the franchise agreement, see if it's compliant or not. Your disclosure document, have it checked by an accountant if you don't understand financial projections. Let them see if the financial projections given to you is sustainable. Do a due diligence, and I've mentioned to you, word of mouth, do your homework, phone up franchisees, speak to as many people as possible, do a proper due diligence, have a look at Hello Peter. Is this brand mentioned in Hello Peter? So these are all ways, as I said to you, cannot guarantee success, but certainly limit your risk. Communicate with the franchisor. Don't wait until it becomes so problematic, and that's when you contact your franchisor. When your franchisor requires training and seminars, please attend. Please make time in your day to attend because it's valuable to you as a franchisee, valuable to the franchisor, and valuable to the brand per se. So in conclusion, I've given you the process of the franchisor, the franchisee. I've mentioned to you about the Consumer Protection Act and that you need to do the due diligence. So if I can take off my hat as the attorney and put on the hat as the chairperson of FASA, just to give you very brief background, FASA is the Franchise Association. We've been around for the last 44 years, since 79. FASA started out in promoting ethical franchising. That's what we continue to champion, ethical franchising. We have and we continue to play a leading role in the franchise industry. In 2019, we had a survey, and the survey told us that 14% of the GDP relates to franchising. So franchising is not a small business. We are a big, formidable business, and franchising spans over 14 sectors. We've just done a new survey in 2023. On the 26th of October, FASA will be having a conference, and we're doing it by way of hybrid. I strongly recommend that you register with us. We will be giving out the survey, and we will be looking to see how franchising has fared, how we have evolved as an industry since 2019. So I urge you to please register. We're going to have the Minister of Small Business coming to speak to us. We're going to be speaking to her on what we as a franchising industry, what we expect from the government. FASA also has monthly virtual networking sessions. You don't need to be a member for that. If you're a non-member, you pay a nominal fee of 50 Rand. It's on the third Thursday of every month. Every month we have valuable speakers who come to talk to us on business. We also have monthly newsletters that provides information up to date as to what is happening in the industry. So these are my contact details. If anyone wishes to contact me regarding franchising law, I don't only do franchising law, I'm also a commercial practitioner. I do agreements, sale of business, shareholders, sale of shares, whatever contract there is. So that's me in a nutshell. And I actually am also qualified in the corporate governance, and I've got a diploma, and that was through the Institute of Ireland. So that's me in a nutshell. And thank you, everyone, for listening. And thank you for this opportunity. And I will be around for questions and answers. So if there are any questions, you're welcome to ask me. Thank you.